Hello, guys. Welcome back to Take One, where we're doing another episode. Today, I brought Lenny Agnello and Jada Canty, and today we're going to discuss in regards to theater. I personally thought this would be a good conversation only because we did discuss about film in a recent episode, and the theater aspect is not really spoken a lot about, especially in the United States. And I feel like that's a bit of an injustice, and I feel like this would be a good time and opportunity to just basically talk about basically you guys' experience in theater and like where do you see it in unforeseen in the future. So why don't you guys give you a brief introduction on yourselves?
Okay, ladies first. I'm Jada Canty, and I am from Zephyr Hills, Florida, though I do theater in Tampa. I went to the University of South Florida and got my bachelor's in theater with a concentration in performance. I am also an author. I have my own poetry book out I released last year, and I am focusing right now on a technique called Theater of the Oppressed, which was started out as a pedagogy by Paulo Freire, and then Augusto Boal from Brazil, he took it over as a theatrical practice. And yeah, that's about me a little bit.
I'm Lenny Agnello, or Agnello, as I've been introduced.
He's like, that's how it sounds like.
Is that how it's been pronounced this whole time? Telemarketers were so close. I've recently just started my own theater company here in Tampa. It's called Marshall Padden Super Secret Syndicate. Sort of juxtaposed, I guess, to what you're doing a little bit. We strive to just do working man's theater. I think there's a void of just comedy for the masses in this town, so we're just trying to fill that. Outside of that, just done some film work. Got my first directorship coming up next season for a theater. Yeah. That's, it's kind of a day-to-day process, One day you don't have much lined up, the next day your calendar's full, which I think is the blessing that we all look for.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. Like that's what it is. Like sometimes you'll just go through like auditions and you don't get anything, and then sometimes you just like book within months and
and you're turning people down, which I think is the best problem to have as a theater person.
Oh, absolutely.
So, no, I don't have room for you in my schedule.
You say that smugly.
Right. Unless you're willing to give me another $1,000, then I can probably pencil you in.
I was Lenny last week. This week I'm Leonard.
Right, yeah.
You gotta put some respect on my name.
Yeah.
So how did you guys get into theater?
Well, actually, I started acting in 10th grade. I didn't come out the womb acting, but I remember when I was a kid, I would like watch movies, I'd watch shows, and I'm like, oh, I want to do that. I want to I've always had a big imagination, and I've always playing role playing when I was a kid. And so it was around 10th grade, we had drama club at my high school, and my theater teacher encouraged me to audition for this short play. And so I did. And she was like, this is your first time acting? I'm like, yeah. She's like, you're in. Like, she gave me a role and everything. And then I kind of just stuck with it. My senior year of high school, I was the drama club president. And then after I graduated high school, I transferred to community college, and then I transferred to USF, and I was in a few USF shows, one with Giovanni. And I don't know, I caught the bug.
What show did you guys do together?
Measure for Measure.
Oh, right on. Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
I didn't see Measure for. The first time I saw you was in The Crucible, I think.
Yes.
Tituba, right?
Yes.
Yeah. No, you were great in that.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I was actually shocked when I got cast as Tituba because it was Helen Tennyson, who came from the UK. Mm-hmm. The USF had a Brit program, and I think I read for Abigail at first, but then she cast me as Tituba. I was like, oh, okay. And then I somehow conjured a Bayesian accent because, Tituba's from Barbados. So I had to conjure an accent, and it was actually I got good compliments on my accent. Even one from, I forgot her name. She was a classmate. She's like, I'm from I'm from the islands and your accent was spot on. Are you from the islands? I'm like, no, I'm from Florida. Listen,
Zephyr
She
Hills,
rolls
baby.
her eyes.
Zephyr Hills, baby. But
As she
mean,
rolls her eyes.
I had to tap into my ancestors, my black side, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna conjure this accent. And, that's what happened. And I've been rolling with theater ever since. I've done a few shows here in Tampa with Job Site Theater. I did A Clockwork Orange, and I did Picasso at Le Pont de Gilles. And I've done a show in Lakeland called Traffic that was based on human trafficking. Um, and I've just, been going with the flow ever since.
As you should, really.
Honestly.
Right? Like, I think once you sort of get in your mind that this is the destination I'm going to and nothing else will matter, you sort of start losing opportunities in theater because it's not always about that destination. It's definitely about the journey you take.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely.
To get to there.
And it's also very difficult in the sense that because like in the difference between film, it's more of like when film you have like certain shoot dates and you might have like a table read in front of it, but after that that's basically it. Like with theater, you have rehearsals, and then you have like you have no idea how long that run is even going to be. Because I've had runs when I did theater, I did runs that were like 1 to 2 weeks, and then I had runs that were like a month plus. And like that's very hard, especially when you have a job to just even balance it like that.
Yeah.
Like how do you guys go about it?
It just boils down to, are you willing to wake up and put in the work? Right? Because I don't think any of us, especially in Tampa, very few of us anyway, are paying our bills. I think just acting, especially in theater, because it's such an undervalued part of our society right now, especially post-COVID. It's not uncommon to walk into a Saturday night in a theater on a Saturday night and it not be full. Whereas 5-6 years ago, you could probably sell out that Saturday night show.
Right.
So, yeah, it's just, are you willing to put in that work? Are you willing to make those sacrifices in life? And a lot of it is your social life, right? Like you have to go out with friends less. There's less nights out drinking, less nights out having a good time. But I think it all pays off when you're standing there on that stage under those lights, especially for me, because I've been doing a lot of comedy in the last 3 years. So when you say a line and that hits and you get 200 people to laugh back at you simultaneously, it's like, what else would I rather be doing? You know what I mean? Right?
Energy.
This is amazing. You feel like a conductor of an orchestra of laughter. You just point and things erupt, and it's amazing.
And a lot of it is just energy, because that's something that's
Right.
different between film and theater. It's just like the energy that you receive from the audience is something that like it's undescribable unless you actually do it.
It's like
Right.
crack.
Right.
It's
Like,
like,
It's
honestly.
a little bit, yeah.
Because you're in rehearsal and you don't have an audience in front of you and you keep doing the same thing, and then it becomes kind of, okay, I'm ready to put this on the stage, and then you actually have an audience in front of you and you get their, like, you feel their energy and you kind of feel out the crowd for the night, and you either get a really good crowd or you get a crowd that's kind of like, it's the Sunday matinee
Right.
old people,
Yeah.
And they're gonna make you work for it.
They're gonna make you work for it. Trust me.
Yeah.
Nothing against old people though. We love your money. It's like crack. You get the laughs, you get the gasps, and then it's like after the show, you get, oh my God, that was amazing, that was great, and it's like crack.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting too, because like I feel like that's like I had the opportunity to even like perform and even view like theater and like in Europe. And that is one of the challenges that we have, is just like in regards to like Italy and France, like they view it also as like a part of culture. So it's a lot easier to get young people to come watch theater. And like for some reason, like for theater in the United States, it's much more like of a hard sell.
You have to
for
pull
young
teeth.
people. You have to pull teeth.
Well, I think it boils down to, like, in Europe, children start drinking at 10.
Right.
Right? So,
Yeah.
I think if you just encourage kids to drink at 10 in America, they'll be more apt to want to do theater.
Honestly.
Who do I need to write? What's your representative? Like you, I didn't come out of the womb acting myself. I went to USF as well. I got a bachelor's degree in philosophy. And while I was there, I took a semester that was it was like Marxism, social injustice, a Foucault seminar, just this heavy semester of the world is doomed. There's nothing you can do to fix it.
Jesus.
Hold on to your butts and just have a
Yeah.
ride. So I was like, fuck this, I'm taking something fun next semester. So I just so I decided to take an improv class with Dan Granke, yeah. And in the middle of that, he was like, hey, have you ever maybe thought about like doing a show? And I was like, no, not at all. And he was like, actually, come audition. And I was like, okay, all right. So he cast me, and then I got cast in something else that year too. I don't remember what it was. It was less fun. But then I just went the next season and got cast again, and then realized that this is exactly what I should have been doing. Because I think all of us as kids looked at that TV set and we were like, this would be the ideal way to spend our days. I was probably in 5th grade when a childhood friend of mine first slid me Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And just talk about life changing. I was like, this is what you can do? Like, you can just go out there and be silly and just kill it? Yeah. Sounds great. I'm all in.
Yeah, that was satire at its prime between that and Life of Brian.
Dude, Life of Brian was so tight. Except for the part where they fall on the alien spaceship. I never quite understood why he fell on the alien spaceship.
I mean, it's like that shit was way ahead of its time.
Way ahead of its time.
Because now you have something like Book of Clarence and stuff like that, and I still seen some similarities between that and Life of Brian. I'm like, wow,
right.
yeah.
I'm not familiar with Book of Clarence.
It came out last year with Lakeith Stanfield.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a really good movie. Like I enjoyed it. It's very.
So I have to check it out.
Yeah, although it has more of like. It has that comedic tone, although they keep it. They have a little bit more seriousness to it. Like they're trying to make a whole cohesive narrative, and they have a lot of surrealist kind of stuff, which is like I really enjoyed. Yeah, but that was neither here nor there. See, that's the things between theater and film was the idea of there's certain stories that I feel like work in theater that don't necessarily don't work in film. I feel like there's certain different types of stories that like go through the theater that like if you're in film you don't really get those stories, like stories that basically take place in like one room.
Can you give an example? Well, because I think just to contradict that a little bit, the Hateful Eight, Quentin Tarantino, right? The first hour and 45 minutes of that movie takes place in a carriage. Right. It's just 4 people sitting in a carriage driving through a snowy mountain, having fantastic dialogue that's really draws you in. So I think if the story's good, right? And I think to make a good story, it's timeless, right? So like the Bible will say, "There's nothing new under the sun." So, for example, Measure for Measure, for example, I was reading for Angelo the other day, doing an audition to play Angelo the other day. And there is not anything that those characters have experienced that we can't sort of conceptualize how it would look in our modern world. So it's a timeless story, and that's why it would work. And I think it would work on stage. It would work on film. I think what it boils down to is the director's eye. Right. Do you see it on a sort of a proscenium stage with people moving and blocking, or do you see it sort of in a cut frame scenario? So I disagree. I think stories can be the same story can apply to film and theater, no matter the story. It's just who gets their hands on it. Who are the actors? Who's the production crew? Who's the director? And how do they see it in their mind? Well,
wouldn't you feel like that kind of success between like for like the Hateful Eight? Yeah, you're right. It was like basically like a bunch 8 people in a. Why do I have to guess how many people? It literally says it.
It literally says it right there. In fact, there's 9.
I was
just like one guy in the closet pokes out, goes back in. Matthew Broderick behind the door.
Like the fact that there's like 8 of them in a room, like do you feel like that was a lot of drawn because of Quentin Tarantino? Like for example, one thing that popped up to me was like Danny in the Deep Blue Sea, that it's 2 people in a bar and then in a bedroom, and that consists of maybe like the runtime would be like an hour 20 maybe. Right. That's I feel like it would be a hard sell, especially today where we want a lot of spectacle in our film.
Fair. That's very fair. And as you're talking, I immediately think of My Dinner with Andre, right? I don't think worked on film. I think it got some critical sort of acclaim, but didn't work on film. It's literally just 2 guys. One, they've been friends, and one goes. Are you familiar with My?
Not really.
Yeah, it's basically the podcast, the film.
Yeah, it's basically the podcast, the film. Right? these two guys that have known each other for quite some time. One has gone off and lived this adventurous life, and the other one has done the routine life. And they get together to have dinner.
Okay.
And the one that's gone off and lived this adventurous life just keeps telling story after story after story. And his friend, who has done this routine thing, is doing his best to really care, right? To really pay attention and listen, and not sort of let what his friend's done affect him in a negative way. I think the reason that movie didn't work though is because Sean Wallace didn't know his lines. You can see him as he's talking. He's looking over to the script about every 3 seconds.
Oh, Lord.
May he rest in peace.
I'm like, he's like, I know you did, but I'm gonna call you out on it
right now. I need answers, Sean Wallace. Come to me in a dream on a dolphin.
I think it's interesting when you said that, film has to become a spectacle now.
Right.
I think that's the same with theater nowadays. People have become like so short attention span.
Right.
Like as a society that with theater, you constantly have to keep the pace going and you have to keep some sort of spectacle to keep people engaged. And it's different from years and years ago where you could put on the fucking Crucible for like, it's a 3-hour freaking play and people would just, but nowadays, if you try to put on a 3-hour Crucible, people won't leave at intermission because they're bored. So then it's like, when it comes to directors, directors, in my experience, we got to pick up the pace, guys. And it's like, okay, I could kind of see that now because people have such a short attention span nowadays. I blame TikTok. But, I mean, so I think it's interesting that you said that because it's like, it's got to be like, even with musicals, it's got to be like Disney World spectacle level for people to come and see it. And, even Broadway is struggling though. Like Broadway used to be the talk of town. Now it's like they're struggling to get people to fill the seats too. So, yeah.
Do you think maybe, because something I noticed, like, especially in England, right, a lot of their, like, film elite still go and do theater quite regularly, right? And I don't think we really get that in the United States, right? You either do film elite stuff or you do theater
It's
elite
very
stuff.
rare you have... Because there are actors who did start out on stage, like I know Viola Davis started out on stage, and some of the other greats started out on stage, but very rarely do you have any of them that will go back and do stage work. It's like, okay, I left the stage, now I'm just doing film and television. They rarely ever go back.
I'm gonna sort of butcher this recanting, but it was something Ron Williams said in an interview a while ago when he was graduating, or before he passed, when he was graduating for Juilliard. The person who gave his commencement speech, can't remember his name, said something along the lines of, I have now made you champions of theater. Unless you want to go make money, then you'll do movies.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing.
And it's also like treated in a different respect. Like for like a lot of people, like you said, like in the UK, even Australia and Canada, like it's almost like you need to even do film, you should do your practice through theater. Like they treat that as like almost like
a rite of passage.
A rite of passage. Like in the United States, though, you don't really get that. Like people just jump straight into film. There was something that you said that was interesting that like I wanted to bring back on. You mentioned that sometimes like directors will be like, let's pick up the pace because people are going to lose their attention. Do you feel like that affects the play in a negative way? Only because there are certain, like, if you're getting like having a specific moment with someone.
I actually discussed this with someone not too long ago because he said that he saw one of my plays that I was in. And he was like, there were moments where y'all really could have slowed down. There were, because and it was in Clockwork Orange. I know Clockwork Orange is kind of like a, heavy play, but there were moments where it could have slowed down. And he said, there were moments where it should have been slowed down, but I felt like y'all were too quick with those. I'm like, yeah, that was the director choice. They wanted us to pick up the pace, and in all honesty, I'm like, there could have been some moments that could have been slowed down a little bit because I understand we got to keep the attention of the audience, but we need to give audience a breath too and be able to sit and think and process. And, it's okay to pick up the pace sometimes, but then you lose when you sit there and go too fast on moments that need to be slow. then it's like, what happened?
Right.
What happened?
Right.
You know, and they don't have time to process it.
Right, but I think you have to earn those moments,
Yeah,
right? Like,
exactly.
you have to really drive the script to
Mhm.
get to there, and I think a big thing that I see, especially in sort of semi-professional theater that's around this area and probably other ones as well, is that, and I've been guilty of it too, and pace is something that I constantly tell myself when I'm up there, because as an actor, you're playing this game where you're saying your lines and you're trying to put actions on top of them and
Mhm.
reactions to what your scene partner is saying.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people get in their head that to make a connection with somebody is to do it slowly.
Mhm.
But in reality, conversation happens at the pace we're talking right now.
Exactly.
So you have to drive the pace through the conversations, and then when you get to that moment, right, where
Mhm.
that moment with the meat and the heart, then you've allowed yourself to take that extra 3 to 4 minutes
Mhm.
to really allow this for the audience to sit in
Right.
that communication, that
Mhm.
connection between
Right.
the two
It's like a
interlocutors.
flow of conversation, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
you wouldn't, because if you like you said, like you slow too slow, make it too slow, it comes almost like unnatural and
Right.
unrealistic. But
Someone told me one time, a director in town told a cast that I was in, that the difference, the line between your audience being invested in you and your audience thinking about the load of laundry they have to do is razor thin. And
Mhm.
you have to drive the script to keep them invested in you.
Mhm.
Uh, but I do agree. I think a lot, and I have had a lot of directors as well that are just like pace, 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 pace,
Yep.
pace, 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 and you miss over the heart. You just skip right
Yep.
over it, and you're like, oh, dang.
Yeah, exactly.
I worked so hard for
Yeah.
that, and it's lost.
Yeah.
so for you guys, like, did you guys have like a particular challenge in a certain role? Like, what was the most challenging role for you guys?
I would have to say Isabella from Measure for Measure,
Mm.
because in my opinion, she had her gray moments. It wasn't she was good or bad. It was she had to make this decision of, do I give up my chastity to save my brother, or do I keep to my own morals? Fuck my brother, he can go to jail and die. And I that was like the first role I encountered where I'm like, there's really a morality of grayness here, because and I think that's what draws me to gray morality and like shows and characters, is like, that's the human experience. Sometimes we're not always good, we're not always bad. Sometimes we have to make decisions that may not make us look good, but we do it, out of the kindness of our heart. But it's tough decisions.
Mhm.
So that role was difficult for me because, one, it was actually like my first lead role I've ever had. And two, you know, it's like it's kind of like me personally. I've always been sheltered.
Mm.
I've always been, oh, the world is cruel, the world is mean, in my upbringing. And then this was in USF, so around the time I was really coming into myself. So it was just like I was fighting with. I saw I saw myself in Isabella,
Mm.
and but I think she had to make decisions that didn't necessarily make herself look good. And that's when I realized, I'm like, you know what? We as humans, we have to do the same thing. And so that was a challenge, diving deep into that character and just making it work.
Now, did you discover that like when you first read the play, or is that something that you discovered through the process?
Through the process, because I did read the play prior, but through actually being in her shoes, it was like a process of discovery. Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
Which those make the most human characters, because like in reality, it's like very few characters realistically are either completely morally wrong and completely morally like right.
Mhm.
I made the discussion that this is one of my acting mentors basically told me that most of us have around 70% in common, and it's that 30% that makes us different.
Hmm.
And because we've all had the same human experiences, we've all been angry, we've all been frustrated, we've all loved, we've all felt depressed, like we've all felt anxious. This is all stuff that we've all experienced in one part of our life or in another. And that was And when you just see that in characters, like it easily grabs you onto it. It's like, okay, I'm starting to understand where this person is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Lenny? Like you
Probably When the Righteous Triumph was. It was original scripted stage work stint. I wasn't even originally cast in it. I got a phone call from the artistic director over there on a Wednesday, I think. And she was like, "Hey, are you in a show right now?" And I was like, "No." And she was like, "Do you want to be?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay." Thinking it was, something upcoming. We'd be starting rehearsals in a matter of weeks. She goes, "Great, I need you on stage Friday." I was like, "Wait,
this
as in
Friday?
2 days from now." And she's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh, it's like that. Okay, I'll be down." I picked up the script. Learned all those lines in 48 hours. One
Jeez.
on stage on Friday, off book. And it was the role had multiple tracks. So you played the When the Righteous Triumph is a telling of the civil rights movement here in Tampa. So it focuses around people that really existed.
Right.
So the role I accepted had one track you played Julian Lane, who was the mayor of Tampa at the time. And then you juxtapose that with the Klan's leader, right? So you're playing the mayor of Tampa, who I think is trying to be a progressive of his time in the civil rights movement, with the leader of the Ku Klux Klan.
I think that was intentional.
That was intentional, yeah.
To have the same character.
Just have the same actor do that. And so I go and I get the script, and so the challenge of learning the lines was very difficult. But then you sort of get the context, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, I say the N-word like 37 times.
I seen the show. I was like, hey.
Okay, it's a job, right? Like, and I have an opportunity if I can be hated, or if I can make this character hated, I set up the protagonist of our story to get the win. So that's what you need to do and focus on. But probably the most difficult night of that run is there was a character in the show, Clarence Fort, who I believe was played by, I cannot remember his name, and I feel so guilty. Anyway, the real Clarence Fort came to see the show one night, and he's sitting front row, and I call this man everything except the child of God. Like, and so it was one of those difficult moments to stay in character on a stage without Lenny stepping in and being like, that guy is sitting right there. But all in all, I think we did a decent job. I believe the theater's bringing it back this season.
They're doing it at the Straz.
Are they really?
Yep.
Yeah,
Right.
nice. Good for them. And good for Mark Lieb, the guy who wrote it. No, it's a really good play. I would go see it. 100%. Yeah.
That's a story that's not really told about much, like because many
No.
people from Florida don't really know much
No.
about that.
I think we've done a horrible injustice to the civil rights movement post the 1980s. We've sort of undone, sort of legislatively, everything that we've accomplished.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, that's probably the hardest role I've done.
Right. So for seeing the difference between, like, I would say, like, theaters, like usually we get like the script ahead of time, so we can always like look it up and see, well, what is going on. Like, what roles do you guys particularly go for, like try to shoot for?
I like to strive for dramatic roles. I'm a dramatic person sometimes, but just
No
also.
way.
I'm
teasing. You all should have seen that side eye.
No, it's all good. No, I like characters.
She's, I'm not working with him ever.
I don't even know you that well. I'm just dropping things.
I like characters with a lot of meat to their bones. Just a lot of depth, a lot of a character you can really take a journey in. I like strong women characters. I like sometimes doing comedic characters, though. I guess I beat myself up sometimes because I'm like, I'm not a funny person. And I've had people like, you're really fucking funny, and I'm like, I've had people tell me, you seem intimidating. You look intimidating. And I'm like, thanks. I get it from my mom. But no, I've learned that intimidation, like when people say, "Oh, you look intimidating," I think it's because I want the people to bring out the best in themselves. I don't want you to be fake.
Right.
I don't want you, to put up a front with me. I want to see who you are. And I guess that's why, people think I'm intimidating. But I'm funny. I can be funny. It's just I think I get the funny from my family because my family, even though they're crazy, they are funny because I guess they use jokes as a mechanism for coping with trauma. Because some of the stories that my family tells around like a, New Year's bonfire is some of the craziest shit you'll hear. And like, I wish people could just sit in on my family having a conversation just for one day. Cause I'm like, y'all need to see what I go through and hear these people. But I guess I get that comedy from my family, but I like dramatic roles more, but I don't mind doing comedy as well. Cause sometimes we just need a laugh. We just need to get out of we need to get out of depression, and some people just need a good laugh.
I feel like comedies a lot of times are just kind of like swept under the rug because, like, if you look at it, like for example, like in the Oscars, how often does a comedy ever get like acknowledged? Almost never.
Yeah.
That seems to be a lot of like your field of expertise.
Oh, dude, I love comedy. Yeah, like comedy is where it's at for me. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy the meaty roles. I'm gonna go audition for Death Trap in a couple weeks, which is one of my favorite plays of all time, Death Trap.
I'm not familiar with it.
Oh, it's a great story. We'll talk about it later.
That's fine.
But I think comedy doesn't get the respect it deserves. Comedy is really hard.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
If you go out and you kill in a night of comedy on stage, your energy is up the entire time. There's a lot of physical work. And you have to really pay attention to your scene partner and find the beats that you're working with. And you need that pace to be up because you want them to be stopped. You want the laughter to sort of drown out from the joke you just told while the setup for the second punchline's coming right in your face. So by the time they've forgotten about that joke, the next punchline hits them. What's been your favorite comedy role?
I did Germaine from Picasso Le Pont de Gilles, and I liked that role because she was kind of like that grounded comedy, kind of like that straight player of the whole show, because almost everybody in that show was a comedic role. And the director, I kind of was like, I'm not really funny. And she's like, no, you are. You're the straight person and you are funny.
Straight man's the most unthankful job in comedy.
Exactly. Right. And, she's like, you have like a big role as the straight person, like the straight man. And it's like, I do. And so it's like when everybody on the stage with me is like doing the punchlines, doing the jokes, and I'm like there and I'm doing my thing. And then I hear people laughing in the audience. I'm like, oh, I am doing my thing. I just have a different way of doing it. You don't always have to be like, physical or, extravagant comedy. You could just be that straight person and people will still laugh, and just, I worked with great actors in that show. I worked with Ned, Brian Shea,
Avril Snell.
Avril Snell. They're both veterans in the Tampa Bay area, and I worked with other great people, and I felt that reassurance from them as well. Like, because sometimes I would doubt myself, and they just reassure me like, "You're great,"
No, Ned's great. I haven't worked with Brian Shea, but Ned's great. I did 12 Angry Men with him, and just an all-around stand-up human being.
He is.
Yeah, 100%. You said something. I had a thought and it's gone, Gio. What I want to know, Gio,
you make it sound like it's my fault.
It is your fault.
Damn it.
What I want to know, Gio, is how come you get to wear the headset and we're just over here?
You guys have headsets.
What? Oh.
Yeah, you guys have headset. I thought you guys would have seen it by there.
Really?
I thought you guys didn't want to use it.
I would have seen it laying on the floor of R2D2 throw up with his cords over here.
I don't feel anything over here.
You don't got a headset?
I don't feel anything.
No. She's like, I need help.
I only hear me in my headset.
If I speak, do you hear me?
Not at all.
Really?
Really?
Okay.
Yeah. Here.
We're having tell
me I'm wrong.
All right. Then we'll take a pause and then Okay, Sebastian, blood coming through. I don't give a fuck. I'm keeping all this.
So, are we back?
We are back.
We are back.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Did
so
we
I'm
ever really leave? Is my question.
no. I'm keeping a
No.
lot of this shit in. I don't give a fuck.
So, that's something we try to do at Marshall Patton's Super Secret Syndicate, marshallpattons.com. Is like I said, I feel there's a big void in Tampa for just this room for comedy, right? I think a lot of the big theaters here tend to lean towards those dramatic pieces or musical pieces, which are great and important and wonderful. And I feel about 30% of the population really buys into that, but you've really left out about 70% of a potential theater audience.
Right.
And if we want to start making theater sold out again, we have to sort of reach past our comfort zone and do things that aren't going to get the critical acclaim, right? Like I didn't start this company thinking that I'm going to be showered
Right.
in awards. I started this company thinking that I'm going to take people out of their lives for 2 hours and let them leave the theater with a giant smile on their face. I don't want them thinking about that load of laundry they have to do. And if I can do that through dick and fart jokes, fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's like one of those things that like it's easier to like detect like something like extraordinary from like drama because like you have those like emotional scenes and those heavy scenes and stuff like that, and people really buy into those, but people don't really appreciate basically the subtlety of like comedic acting, because like you said, like you need good chemistry, you need phenomenal writing, and you get good timing, because if one of those things are lacking, it's going to be flat.
Right.
It's-
Right. And I think so the first show we did, the Complete History of America Bridge, you saw it, so you could
Yeah.
honestly tell me
It was actually really good. No,
Was
it
it
was really
good?
good.
Yeah. What I did was I cast myself for budgetary purposes, obviously, because I'll do it for free. But when you do this for 5 or 6 years pretty consistently, you run into a lot of people, and you really see who wants to put on good product and who's just there for the idea that they're an actor.
Yeah.
So I found 2 people that I'd become friends with that really just, it's a passion for them. And the 3 of us got in a room, no director, and everyone was responsible for their own track. And man, just some magical things started happening because, like I said, you had 3 people in the room that were heavily invested to put on the best comedy performance they could. And I think fireworks happened kind of magically. But yeah, so juxtapose that, because you're more of a dramatic, that's sort of where you lean. So for me, the magic in comedy is the ability to take people out of their lives. They don't think about their load of laundry and they leave with giant smiles on their faces from theater. What's the win to you in a dramatic show?
I think it would be when there's multiple things for me. One is when people really start to think and they like, because I know we tend to turn our minds off when we're in the theaters, like, oh, we're just seeing a show and, just to kill time or whatever. But I think it's just when people actually think and they feel that human emotion. With drama, you see situations where, oh my God, this happened in my life, or this could happen in somebody's life. And it's that human condition with drama. And I see it with comedy too, because we're funny people where we can be dramatic and we can be funny. And that's the human condition. That's where drama and comedy go hand in hand. And I think that's also why I like dark comedies too. It's like you still get those moments of oh my God, but then you get that relief too and I think because I'll talk about it a little bit. I did a fundraiser performance. I'm part of Outcast Theater Collective, ran by Cornelio Aguilera, but we call him Cokie. And
As one does.
yes. And we did a fundraiser performance yesterday, and it was basically we did 2 shows. We did 2 plays. The first one was written by him, Women of Juarez. It's about basically the maquiladoras in where was it? Where is it? In Texas. And basically women would work long hours at these factories, and a lot of these women would get kidnapped in the dead of night because they usually had to come home late. They get kidnapped and they turn up dead. And that was kind of like what the story was about. Is by the end of the play, the story of this woman, she was walking home one night from work and she got picked up and she was never found again until her body was found days later. She was murdered. And that's a realistic story that's still going on to this day.
Right.
And then the other piece we did was called 10,000 Ants. And basically, some of us in the collective, we got together and we basically, how it started is we talked about oppressions we may have faced. And then we kind of build a story around the one that we kind of resonate more. So the story we went with, um, her name is Katie Huddle. I don't know if y'all are familiar with her. She's a sweet girl. And her story, she was facing these microaggressions throughout her day. And so then we kind of turned her real life story into this piece called 10,000 Ants. And what's so great about our technique with Theater of the Oppressed is we use what is called forum theater, where we present the piece in a way that the protagonist doesn't have a happy ending. And so after we perform the piece, Koki facilitated it yesterday. He's like, he turns to the audience, he's like, okay, any suggestions on any part of the piece where we can end it favorably for the protagonist? And people gave suggestions. Okay, now I want you to step on stage and take the shoes of the protagonist and play out what you think would be the solution. And the job of the other people on stage, the actors, you have to push it towards the original ending, the bad ending. While the person who goes up and intervenes, they have to push it towards a favorable ending. And so basically what 10,000 Ants was about is this Asian American girl facing these microaggressions throughout her day. The first one, she's going to a callback for an audition. She's on the phone with her mom, and it's kind of like flashback sequences. So the first flashback, she's in class. She's a college student, and one of the, they're doing a project, and one of the students calls out her dyslexia, her disability, kind of in a mean way. The next flashback, she goes to an ice cream shop. And, there's other characters in there. And the ice cream shop owner, kind of throws out this microaggression of, because my character that I played, I was like, oh, I'm so glad you guys are doing samples again. I know when COVID went around, y'all had to stop doing that. And the ice cream shop owner was like, oh, so the Kung flu. And you know how that's,
right.
And so Katie's character, who she played the protagonist. It's like
kind of a good joke, though. Like, I'm not gonna lie, those two words together will incite a giggle.
Interesting.
But hear me out.
What's interesting is that our technique, we improv the whole piece,
right.
And then Koki transcribed what we improved.
Really?
So basically, the man who played the ice cream shop owner, his name is Len. That's what he said in the improv.
That's what he came up with.
But we also based it around Katie's experience. She actually did experience this. Katie, I hope you're comfortable with me sharing your story if you're listening to this. Katie was telling us she had went to an ice cream place and she was just standing in line and there were other people in front of her. And I guess they were talking about COVID, and the ice cream shop owner said, oh, you mean the Kung flu, or oh, the Szechuan sniffles. And Katie heard it.
Okay, Szechuan sniffles would have gotten me too.
And Katie heard it, and she's like, oh, you would say that in front of me because Katie is Asian American, she's Chinese. And the guy was like, oh, well, I'm confident enough. I can say whatever I want to say. And Katie took offense to it because it was like, even though it was something small like a joke, it's like people have been kind of, when COVID was going around, it's like, oh, it's that Kung flu or the Chinese flu. And it's like, I could see how that's a microaggression.
It would be like less of the joke itself, more of like the implications.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was her real life experience. So we made, a whole short play about it. So that flashback was the ice cream shop. The next scene that we created was there was a driver scene, like an Uber scene. She gets into an Uber, and the Uber driver is kind of like, they're kind of making conversation. And then she's like, yeah, I'm an actor. I'm on my way to a callback. And he's like, oh, you probably don't make a lot of money doing stage acting. And she's like,
Nope.
no, well, checks come in here and there. I also do voice acting, whatever. And the guy's like, well, have you thought about doing a side gig, like selling feet pics? Selling feet pics. And, and it was kind of like...
As he puts his phone down.
And it was kind of like that awkward conversation. And she's like, what are you trying to implicate? Because, like, I'm a woman. You think I should just start selling feet pics? I mean, there are some people who are...
It. I'm not gonna lie.
Some people are okay with it,
I just picture this play and everyone's being, and he's just out here laughing in the movie.
Who doesn't want a size 13 Italian? Like...
But she's like, some people are okay with that, but, I'm not okay with it. And he was just being awkward. And then so she gets out the Uber. And then the final scene is she gets to the callback, but the director, I also played the director, comes out and is like, hey, we're making some changes. We're offering you this role of the best friend to the protagonist, and but we want to move it forward in a more cultural direction, kind of implicating, oh, you're going to be the Asian best friend. And she's like, the Alexis, the main character Katie plays, she's like, oh man, are you serious? And the director was kind of like, yeah, you weren't really talented in the audition. You didn't really do good, but because you look Asian, you'd make a great best friend Asian girl, And so that was the final scene. Alexis gives up. She's like, oh man. So then that's where, after we cut the short play, that's where we have people be like, okay, what are your thoughts? How do we move it forward in a more favorable direction for Alexis, the protagonist? And people would come up and intervene, play the role of Alexis, and have their own takes. And that's part of Theater of the Oppressed. That's part of Forum Theater, is like, you're not just an audience watching the show. You also, you're a spectator actor. So after what is your take? Okay, now go do it. And it's like, I think that is so interesting. Because you get different perspectives, and you don't always have actors in the audience, but it's interesting to see everyday people go up there and, this is how I would have done it. And
great, go do it.
Yeah, exactly. And
Right.
that's the beauty of why I love Theater of the Oppressed, is you're getting people out their comfort zone.
Right. And I feel like that's something you guys had in common on that aspect, because you both had like plays that like you had put the audience in there too, like as a part of the spectacle. Like I remember you shot water out the audience. You had them.
It was audience participation, bro.
Yeah, I'm saying like I feel like that's one of those things that like can bring people in, because like I heard about this one play in New York where it was basically like maybe 2-3 story like building, and you're just like you're just watching this play, but like there's things happening in different rooms, and depending on where you go, you get a completely take on the story, because you have a completely different character's point of view. And if you go from one room to another room in different orders, you get something completely different.
Very different, yeah.
I feel like stuff like that is something that can like definitely galvanize people to come in. I had a comment that a friend of mine told me, who was like not in the theater world. He asked me the question of, why is it that once the play is done, why not stream it and put it on online? In regards, like, what are your thoughts on that? Because we have things like, for example, like Hamilton, which they did that through they just put it on Disney Plus, and I wanted to see what your take is on it. Would it work as well? Does it make sense? Would you be for that or against that?
Do you have anything?
I'm mulling on it.
So, well, one, it boils down to a rights issue at the end of the day, right? So there is, like, so when we said, hey, let's do the Complete History of America abridged, somebody owns that script, right? And I had to contact them, and they were like, okay, you can perform this show on these dates for this amount of money. And they have the full expectation that it's a closed obligation. It starts this day and it's going to end this day, and we want 10% of your house. That's a whole different ball game when you start bringing in streaming rights into it as well, because they're going to want sort of their cut in perpetuity.
Right.
So that's one thing to consider. The other thing to consider, and this is just my opinion, is that something that makes theater special, the live performance, is that it happened on that night.
Mm.
And if you weren't there, you missed it.
Right.
Right. And the people that were there get to tell their friends that you missed it, especially if it was good. If it was bad, they'd be like, oh, you missed it.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
We've all been in shows that even while we're doing it, we're like, this
Yeah.
is a bunch of wank.
And sometimes you don't realize that until it's like way too late. You're like the background is like you realize, oh, this is a sinking ship. Because like
Right.
sometimes like you'll have something that will like fling up the cast or something that like let's try and change this and that. And then when it's too late in the process, and like, how is this gonna work?
No, you have to trust your script.
Right.
Right. And I always get worried when so many directors have said so many good things to me in the past. So when casts start trying to take liberties with a script that's been tested and tried and performed in huge theaters and is owned by people, and there's a team of lawyers that negotiate how much that costs, when actors start trying to do their own take on that, it sort of creates a bomb, right? When one atom splits off from the rest of the atoms, that's a bomb. And I think that's very true in the theater sense too. When you have one actor or multiple actors trying to break off from the cohesive unit that's in place, you create a bomb. But back to what we were saying earlier, one of the great things about comedy is it's always a spect acting show, I think, because your audience, if you have them, is 100% on stage with you, because it's their laughs that sort of create that timing. And it's a neat trick to have to pull. I've noticed in a dramatic piece, you can stay in character and keep that connection going. And, the actor sort of takes the back seat and, just feeds the lines and you can go forward. But when you're doing comedy, you say a line, you get a laugh, the actor has to step in, you break character in that moment, and you have to hear that laugh. When does it start dying out? And then you have to immediately switch back into your character to do, and it's just a technical form thing.
Almost like a rhythm to it, right?
There is, and you can hear it in a laugh, especially like a good, genuine laugh, is there's a peak, and then it starts sort of waning off, and you want to come back in right before it completely wanes away. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but here we are.
He's like, it was profound.
It was.
Yeah, I'm expecting.
So gorillas.
That's too, man. Like, I was like, he's gonna finish it up though.
No, yeah. Busch Gardens just gave birth to a baby gorilla, I think.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was a gorilla. I think his name's Stella.
Stella.
It may not be a gorilla.
He's like, it was something.
It may or may not be a gorilla. It definitely is called
I'm
Jessica.
not promising it's a gorilla.
But do go to Busch Gardens and ask for the gorilla named Stella and see what happens.
You heard him first. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
If you guys have any plugs, feel free to put them in right now.
I don't.
He's
I don't
like, pressure.
I don't want to give out my Facebook because I don't want random people.
That's real.
Friend requesting me. I don't know you, but I do have an Instagram. It's phoenix.labelle. Phoenix as in the bird. I also have a book out, like I said in the beginning. It's called Stealing Roses. It's a poetry book. It's on Amazon. Please support your starving artist and author. But yeah, I usually just act around town. If you see me, you see me. That's it.
Marshall Padden Super Secret Syndicate, marshallpaddens.com. You can email us at mastermind@marshallpaddens.com. We just finished up the Complete History of America abridged. It sounds like there's a theater in Clearwater that wants to pick us up probably February of next year to do a full run of that show. Got my first directorship coming up at Early Bird Dinner Theater, which is going to be a lovely situational romantic comedy. And, just check us out. We're here to make you laugh. We're here to kind of help you escape the rigors of day-to-day life. So, yeah, marshallpaddens.com.
That's it, guys. Thank you so much for showing up.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you guys so much for watching.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.